Hello, friends. We are interested in the geography of our views, so please like and write in the comments from which city are you watching us, and were there loud stories of betrayal in your city? Share your stories with us. Maybe the next betrayal story will be from your city. And we start. The hot June sun melted the asphalt of Wilton Crest Road as two sleek Sunset Movers trucks rolled slowly toward the new home of Katie and Aidan Reeves. The sparkling white facade, panoramic windows, palm trees reflected in the chlorine surface of the pool. Everything looked as if their married photo was about to grace the cover of Perfect Life magazine. Aidan, chief of cardiac surgery at Pacific Horizon, stood in the driveway, squinting at the tiles as if checking an incision on an operating table. Look, Aidan pointed to the neighbors' mowed lawns. Everything is fine. Our first own oasis. Our chance to stop. Katie nodded, smiled the right width, but her fingers clenching the strap of her bag turned white. The neighbor appeared, first a tan brunette in a bicycle suit. "I'm Skylar, a house across the street. Welcome, guys," she said and handed over a container of cookies. "It's customary for us to welcome newcomers with carbohydrates." "How sweet," Katie responded in a tone in which Aidan detected a slight, almost predatory falsetto, as if his wife had stepped on stage. He gave Skylar the usual professorial smile, but noticed how the neighbor's gaze slid over Katie, freezing on her bare shoulders, wet after a long journey. A moment and a spark ran between the two women, not like simple curiosity. As the movers brought in the sofa, Katie disappeared into the house. Aidan broke the seals on the boxes marked studio. Inside were a tablet, sketchbooks, bottles of liquid watercolor, and user agreements. The inscription, Client J, flashed on the top form. He didn't remember any of her customers on J, but waved his hand. Creative people, random letters. In the evening, the heat subsided. Footsteps echoed in the house. The space, smelling of fresh paint, echoed every word. They assembled the bed together, although the screwdriver kept falling out of Katie's hands. "Too tired," she explained. Aidan pressed her palms to his lips. "We're home. Now everything will become easier." She smiled, but the rhythm of the pulse at her temple was too fast for peace. The evening rays cut the room into stripes. Aidan decided to go for a swim, and Katie went out onto the balcony, as if she was looking for the network on her phone. When her husband returned, he found her staring at the screen. She winced, locking the display. "The client asks stupid questions," she muttered. He nodded, but in the reflection of the glass door, he saw a name flash before the screen went dark: James Wildfire. Later, lying together on fresh sheets, they tried to make love part of the housewarming ritual. Katie's skin smelled like pink lotion. A barely perceptible shiver ran through her thighs when Aidan touched them. She was affectionate, as if she was rewarding him for his efforts, but her gaze flickered with a sluggish expression, like that of an actress repeating a line not in the first take. It all ended quickly, mechanically. After that, she curled up into a ball, covering herself with her back, and he remained lying there, listening to his own heart, which suddenly began to beat faster, as if on the eve of a complex operation. At night, the window in the living room slammed. Aidan stood up. Bare feet felt cold on the parquet floor. Moonlight snatched his wife's phone from the glass table. The device flashed a bright notification. He was not used to reading her messages, but the green rectangle drew his gaze. "Have you waited? Fingers remember your taste." Aidan froze for so long that the notification disappeared. He put the phone back as if it were a scalpel from someone else's operating room. In the morning, the smell of caramel and coffee mixed with the cleaning product. Katie found her husband in the kitchen, where he was intensely polishing the marble. "You're early," she noted, pulling back her robe slightly. "I couldn't sleep. New house, noise." He tried to smile. "Today, I will sign the last papers at Pacific. Will you prepare one of the rooms for the studio?" "Of course," she replied, taking a sip of the latte and wincing. The drink was too hot. Aidan found himself wanting to kiss the corner of her lips to make sure she was still here with him. The technicians were pulling fiber optics, the alarm system was complaining about every door, and Katie remained on the move. signing invoices, showing the technician's sockets, offering water. Her phone vibrated every now and then. One time, Aiden noticed how she, thinking that he couldn't see, pressed the device to her chest as if protecting a secret. After lunch, he went out to the neighbor's fence to find out how to fertilize the lemons. While returning, I heard a woman's laughter from the garage. The voice was low and velvety, not at all her usual bell-like giggle. Aiden looked inside. Katie was standing next to the mover's motorcycle, drawing a line in the air with her finger, and the excitement she felt when she saw a new pallet was visible on her face. Nearby is a young forklift operator. Your hands are covered in oil, but your smile is wolfish. Kathy shuddered when she saw her husband. The guy walked away, not hiding his satisfaction. "Your wife is gorgeous, sir," he whispered with a wink. By evening, the house was empty. The movers drove away. Aiden found Katie in the living room. There were sketches on the table, a female figure with her back turned, her neck exposed defiantly. The lines were bold, almost intimate. New order? Personal project. She covered the drawing with paper. You have to keep your hand in shape. Aiden tried to smile, but his chest was still heavy with the message from the night. Late in the evening, he went out to the pool for a swim. Lying on the water, I saw Katie walk past the bedroom window in a white t-shirt with a phone to her ear. He did not hear the words, but the gestures were lively and enthusiastic. She bit her lip like she did in the dorm when she was hiding her embarrassment. Having finished the conversation, she sank onto the bed, covering her face with her palm, and smiled widely at the emptiness of the room. Aiden came out of the water. Her tablet was lying on the sun lounger. The display was glowing. There is a chat on the screen. The input line has already been typed. Tonight, as soon as he falls asleep. He didn't read further. He closed the tablet and breathed in the dry night air. Katie went out onto the balcony and leaned over the railing. The street was deserted, only a dark hooded figure under a lantern. She raised her hand and waved slightly. The figure shook its head and disappeared into the alley. As they lay down, Aiden tried to speak. The first day in a new house is always strange. "Would you like to discuss the studio plan?" "Tomorrow," she answered softly, kissing his cheek. "Today, I'm just tired." She curled up into a ball, her breathing becoming even. Aiden lay with his eyes open. A night bird began to sing outside. The sound echoed in his ears like the pulse of a patient slipping under anesthesia. He turned to Katie. Her face, illuminated by the moon, seemed infinitely calm. He pressed his hand to her cheek. At that moment, fear turned into surgical determination. We need to understand what is happening before it is too late. Removing his hand, he walked out into the corridor, which smelled of boxboard and night jasmine. At dawn, the house was painted with a peach haze. Aiden woke up to the creaking of the coffee machine. Having gone down, he saw his wife at the stove. Her hair was tied with a ribbon, her cheeks were burning. She danced to the soft music from the phone, face down, as if she herself was part of the secret. The buns were golden in the oven, rolled into a spiral, drizzled with lemon syrup. "New recipe?" he asked. "They sent it to me. I decided to try it," she answered and put the plate down. The sweetness burned the tongue with a hint of ginger and unspoken questions. Katie checked her temperature, not noticing her husband watching. The phone vibrated on the marble island. The caller's name was reflected in the shine of the toaster. Wild. The wife jerked her hand abruptly, canceling the call. Aiden finished his coffee. The warm silence was thick, almost viscous. He put the cup down, feeling his own pulse drown out the birds chirping. It is dangerous to ignore the symptoms, but first you need to establish a diagnosis. He stood up and put his arm around her waist. She allowed a moment of intimacy before gently pulling away, checking out the buns. This movement had everything, the warmth of habit and the cold of mystery. Aiden remembered the feeling of a surgeon memorizing the location of a vessel before making an incision. He understood, the house is ideal, but the marriage requires urgent rehabilitation. By lunchtime, the operating room smelled of cold steel and rubbing alcohol. Aiden was hiding his fatigue under a surgical mask when a notification from an old friend flashed on his smartwatch. "Bro, are you crazy? Is this your wife by any chance? The sender is Liam Drake, a fellow cardiologist, and he's a bitch. But liars usually don't care about other people's wives. Aiden shrugged it off and returned to the scene, but the thought stuck like a splinter. An hour and a half later, having transferred the patient to intensive care, he locked himself in the resident's room. The fluorescent lights hummed and the coffee machine sputtered steam. The phone slid out of the shoe cover pocket. The link was flashing blue, like a siren. Liam_D. Hide the story if you don't want to explain. No emoticons, no softening words, only a short URL. My heart swayed. Aiden put on his headphones, lowered the blinds, and pulled a chair up to the table. Click the browser opens the title page. Surrender to Fire Live Sex Cam Experience. In the center is a freeze frame, a woman in a carmine corset, shoulder-length latex gloves, and a black half-face mask. The camera illuminated the smoothness of the skin, the wet shine of the lacing, the curve of the spine. The face was hidden, but the eyes, slightly closed, looked with impudent tenderness. Behind them he guessed the shadow of a familiar smile. The pointer shook. He clicked Preview. The screensaver dissolved into a short video. The same girl sitting astride a high designer chair, a red strap thrown over her shoulder. A voice, barely muffled by the mask, whispers. For a special viewer with the nickname Wildfire, let's burn tonight. The whisper is English, but the R curls up the same way Katie does when she's in a hurry. It was as if Aiden had a staple driven into his ribs. He fast-forwarded. The woman turns around, turns off the overhead light, leaving the ring lamp. A bright arc bends around the contours of the body. There is a thin comma-shaped mole on the right shoulder blade. He kissed her hundreds of times. There was no mistake. The chat on the right lived its own life. Blake 77, show us the marks, Scarlett. In the last stream column yesterday, 2340, earnings per session, $1,410. Subscribers, 12,048. Model nickname Scarlet Muse. Age, 28. Location, West Coast. My throat is dry. Aiden rocked his chair, but the world didn't rock in response. It was his ideas that rocked. He clicked on the Media tab. The gallery opened with a series of previews. Leather, mask, silk ropes. He recognized the moles on his collarbone, the subtle curve of his nail plates, the snake ring on his middle finger, a gift from him for his 4th anniversary. The knock on the door made me flinch. The resident nurse poked her head in. Doc, new patient for CT, will you sign the referral? 2 minutes, he responded hoarsely. The door closed, leaving a subtle smell of lavender antiseptic. Aiden leaned his forehead against the cold cabinet. Did you wait? Fingers remember your taste. Now the message of the night burned with a new meaning. The phone beeped. Liam_D, are you still alive? Aiden typed, later, not here. He raised the stream window again. In the About Me section, the lines seemed like electric shock. I'm Scarlet Muse. I speak with brushes, canvas, and whip. For those who love the scent of pink skin after a blow. Don't ask personal questions, I belong only to art and you. Brushes. Canvas. 2 exact matches. Scroll and another video. She is wearing leather shorts, holding a stack, tracing it along her thigh. The tip status bar crawls below. Quiet from the speakers. Wildfire, darling, I saved the red marks just for you. The name struck again. James Wildfire. Ring with engraved. The pulse polished the temples. Aiden closed the site, but the screen flexibly doubled in memory, like a retinal afterglow. A technical tablet with a CT image of the patient's aorta remained on the table. The heart in the picture seemed alien but transparent. My own heart felt cloudy, as if it had been dipped into icy seawater. The clock showed 15:14. At 15:30, meeting with a head physician. He put on his robe and went out into the corridor. The walls smelled of bleach. The wheels of the gurneys creaked. Life moved on at a precise, sterile pace, and inside him everything revolved along a track of leather straps and whispers. The phone rang in the elevator. Liam. Hey, dude, I didn't mean to add kerosene, I just thought it was some kind of deep fake joke. Are you okay? Not now, Lee. Listen, if this is true, you need to talk to someone. Your blood pressure. Not. Now. Aiden caught his reflection in the elevator mirror. His eyes were red, as if after a 36-hour shift. Okay, but I'm here, okay? The connection has been lost. The cabin opened on the administrative floor. Aiden stepped into an empty corridor, but instead of the office, he turned into the recreation room. He slammed the door and leaned back. My hands were shaking so much that I had to clench my fists. Questions ran through my head. How many months? How many nights did she lie next to her after the cameras? Who else knows? He thought about the aquarium house, the swimming pool, the lemon trees, the lemon scones, and the hidden wild bell. The whole puzzle clicked into place, forming a grinning grimace. Correspondence, laughter in the garage, night sessions under the ring lamp. A defibrillator beeped very close by as the equipment was checking itself. The sound coincided with the beat of his heart. He took a deep breath, allowing professional automatism to take over. Slow your breathing, count to 5, exhale. But instead of the usual clarity, the image of a mask came shiny, smooth, hugging the wife's face. The castle turned quietly. Someone entered. It was Dr. Elvis, an anesthesiologist intern. Dr. Reeves, are you okay? You are pale. It's just, there's not enough glucose. I'm already on my way. She offered a bottle of orange juice, but he refused. The excessive sweetness now made me nauseous. Elvis left, and Aiden felt strangely grateful for her ignorance. The phone blinked again. Scarlet Muse goes live in 10 minutes automatic mailing. He didn't sign up, but the site was caring. Under the inscription, there is a counter. 9:59. 9:58. His finger hovered over unsubscribe, but instead he clicked join anonymously. The browser prompted me to choose a nickname. He entered Cardio Host and joined the chat, turning off the video and microphone. A room appeared on the screen, a red velvet wall, a ring lamp, a table with brushes, and a stack. A fuzzy ambient melody dripped through the speakers. The viewer count grew, 312, 417. The light behind the scenes clicked. She came into the frame wearing a half-face mask, her hair pulled back into a high ponytail. Around the neck is a thin leather choker. She ran her finger over the lamp as if checking the temperature. Hello, my fiery ones, boomingly, intimately. Today is a special set for you. She took a palette and a brush, dipped it into scarlet paint, and drew a stripe along the inside of her thigh. The chat exploded. Aiden could taste the battery. He watched for exactly 26 seconds, but every second overturned a year of their marriage. With my corner vision, I caught a flash. A wildfire_J, ready to burn for you, Muse. The masked girl looked up at the camera, as if she had noticed his presence through thousands of nicknames. Her pupils sparkled, a light of recognition that still made his knees warm. Aiden pulled out the headphones, closed the tab, and squeezed the bridge of his nose. His pulse was racing like a frightened bird. The sounds of the hospital, the hum of the air conditioners, distant footsteps, the ringtones suddenly became too loud. He wanted to immediately run home, burst into the studio, rip off the mask, but the schedule was tight, like a seam after bypass surgery. Instead, he opened his internal calendar. The next patient was in 40 minutes. Enough to do what surgeons do best, preparing for surgery. He dialed Liam. We need your office for half an hour without prying eyes. Tell me what happened. Preparations for a major operation, he said evenly. It was true, only the operation concerned not the patient's heart, but his own heart. He put on his mask, straightened his back, and stepped into the corridor. Scarlet Muse's voice was still ringing in his ears. Let's burn tonight. He clenched his fist, feeling his nails cutting into his palm. If the flames have already flared up, you will have to become someone who knows how to extinguish fires a surgeon with icy precision. The chlorine surface of the pool glowed with a pale blue rectangle when Aiden returned from the night shift and, without turning on the light, walked through the house barefoot. The tiles still held the remnants of the day's heat, but a cold vacuum was creeping inside him. Words that could describe what had happened no longer existed. The silence was broken only by the distant hum of the air conditioner and the occasional crackle of wood as the house got used to the night. The lamp above the island was on in the kitchen. Katie left him a plate of scones and a note with a fuchsia heart. He brought the paper to his face and inhaled the familiar peach scent of her lotion, a scent that now made his skin tense, as if about to be cut. He put the note back, did not touch the food. His appetite gave way to icy concentration. In the basement, where the architect planned a wine room, a grid of black rectangles hung on the wall, many servers with blinking LEDs. For 2 evenings and a couple of weekends, he pulled cables through ventilation shafts, hid them under baseboards, matching screws to the color of the plaster. Now 8 cameras were watching instead. Bedroom, studio, corridor, garage, kitchen, living room, balcony, and garden. The black pupils of the lenses glittered with drops of glass, thoughtless, but unmistakable. He turned on the tablet and brought up a mosaic screen. Empty, only the curtain in the living room fluttered with air. But he knew that the footage would soon come to life. The cycle began at the same time. At exactly 0:17, the bedroom door swung open. Katie came out in a soft gray robe, and the corridor camera cut through the familiarity of movements and took away intimacy. A second later, she entered the studio and turned on the ring light. A bright ring of light turned the room into an operating room. The robe slid to the floor. Underneath was a red corset with lacing that resembled a surgical suture. She sat down at the laptop connected to the external lens. Aiden clicked the sound icon and heard a barely noticeable breath like the first touch of a scalpel. "Good night, my fiery ones," she whispered to the screen. "Today Muse will be gentle, but you must earn the warmth." Donations poured into the chat. He saw each flash in the reflection on her face. Katie smiled, bit her lip, and slowly ran her finger along the inside of her thigh, a confident, theatrical, alien gesture. During the day, she was absent-minded and cordial. At night, under the lamp, I became someone else. He switched the cameras. The empty bedroom with a crumpled print on the pillow looked sterile, like a ward after discharge. His chest felt tight, but he let the feeling pass, like letting a drug pass, so that clarity could return. In the morning, he left before the alarm clock. In the hallway mirror, gray circles under the eyes gave the face the appearance of a tired ghost. Words, he believed, are a blunt instrument. It's impossible to argue with the Cotters. During the day, behind the hospital parking lot, he opened the camera archive. The data grew faster than departmental statistics. Files for 4 hours, every night. He rewinded. Katie exchanges her robe for leather shorts, talks on video, laughs. Narrow red stripes appear on the skin. Nickname flashes in chat wildfire_J, and she raises a finger to her lips in a gesture that he previously thought was reserved only for him. Life in daylight remained a postcard. Breakfasts together, glasses of smoothies in the yard, her hand on his elbow. She didn't notice the new camera on the bookshelf, didn't see that he was refusing coffee to keep his hands from shaking, didn't feel his gaze scanning her face for traces of the night mask. He removed the passwords from the tablet when she forgot to turn off Wi-Fi synchronization. 2 archived threads were hidden in Telegram. In one, J wildfire emojis, 13-second videos, photographs of fresh marks, as ordered. In the other, Muse Tech accounts, lighting schemes, advice on lenses for you. He saved them to an encrypted drive, labeling them as evidence raw. In the evening, he followed the same scenario. Dinner, light conversation, an offer to watch a TV series. She smiled and agreed, but after half an hour her gaze glazed over. She was drawn to the phone and the ring lamp. He pretended not to notice. The series was shown without spectators. She was taking a shower and, thinking he was sleeping, slipped into the studio. The smell of leather and powder passed through the cracks like anesthetic gas. He tried to remember when the fabric of marriage began to tear. Maybe the minute she first said that her previous apartment was stifling her creativity, and he signed a contract for 13 operating rooms a year. He remembered a student in a faded Neil Young t-shirt, laughing in the rain. But heart surgeons don't allow chaos. In the operating room, Everything is under control as long as the pressure is stable and the clamps are in place. He decided to treat marriage in the same way, only instead of a scalpel lenses. A week later, he installed a mini microphone under the studio table. Now I heard everything: the click of the stack, her muffled laughter, heavy breathing. What hurt most were the pauses between the blows, the moments when she breathed deeply and was free from everything, including him. One night, a new nickname entered the chat: Cardio Coast. A greeting flashed in the right corner of the screen. Katie looked up and said, "Welcome, Ghost. I hope you haven't come to heal hearts." His watch shook on his wrist. It wasn't him. Something was frozen inside. The walls of the room seemed to move closer, not allowing me to breathe. Sleep became short gaps between operations and viewing archives. The assistant noticed a trembling in his fingers. He attributed everything to overwork and asked to introduce an additional protocol to the patient, although the indicators were ideal. Control over someone else's heart was the last island where he could still breathe. Returning home from his rescheduled shift, he heard the rustling of a brush in the studio. Through the crack, I saw Katie in simple leggings at an easel. On the canvas, there was the figure of a woman with drooping wings and red highlights. He quietly walked away, remembering her concentrated face without a mask. He played the coffee machine to indicate his presence. Katie smiled with a warm, morning-like, simple gesture. "Came back early. The shift has been postponed," he answered, adding sugar to the glass, although he drank black. "Will you show me the drawing later?" "When it dries," she confirmed, touching his cheek with cool lips. In the evening, he implemented the last detail: a motion sensor that sent a push notification to his smartwatch if the studio windows were opened between midnight and 3. The vibration was as quiet as the whisper of an anesthesiologist. Now he could operate and at the same time know that she was transforming again. Silence became their main language. He spoke with his eyes, his touch clearly centering his fork on the plate. She responded with no questions and smiled out of thin air. Every night she turned into another. Every morning she returned as if nothing had happened. He collected these changes of identities the way a pathologist collects tissue sections, so that one day he can put them under a microscope and see where the mutation began. From the outside, the house remained picture perfect: a well-groomed lawn, friendly neighbors, peaky sunrises. Silence permeated the walls like a caustic antiseptic. Invisible during the day, it corroded them at night, leaving invisible ulcers that no one had yet tried to treat. And if the house still smiled at its neighbors on its facade, a dull, icy crunch was already growing inside before a hidden thunderstorm. The warm glow of dawn was barely touching the tops of the palm trees when Aiden, leaning against the hood of his Tesla, checked the incoming doors with a glass of cheap filter coffee clutched in his fingers. Steam came through the rim of the glass, but my fingers remained icy. He was waiting for a scan of the results of the nightly algorithm. The router in his wife's studio was now sending a mirror copy of all internet traffic to his hidden server every minute. The loading bar has reached the end. The archive opened with many small HTML sheets. Among the usual site icons with red fire, a new domain stood out: erispictures.com. He clicked. Title introducing Velvet Kiss, starring the irresistible Cat R. Not a single mask. At the promotional layout, she was without latex, in the dimness of the film studio, pressing her lips to the lapel microphone. The producer's signature under the photo is Julian Black. Digital distribution. Exclusive contract. Premiere in the fall. Aiden felt the world hold its breath along with him. There were several files, scans of contracts, a table of payments, a schedule of shooting days. In the fees column for the next date, there was an amount that could pay a 6-month mortgage payment. He scrolled down. Katie's signature was her sweeping, recognizable K. The agreement was made 12 weeks ago, that is, during the very days when they were packing boxes in Sacramento. The steely taste of adrenaline filled my mouth. He opened his notepad and jotted down 2 columns: resources and vulnerabilities. In the first column, a familiar lawyer for a hospital network, a biochemist friend, reaching out to pharmaceutical brands willing to invest in respectable campaigns. The second contains the site schedule, depending on the municipal permit for a private territory, and the name of the producer, about which Liam once laughed. Former boyfriend of media star Grace Collins, self-promoting ladies' man. By 8 in the morning, he was driving along the freeway towards the city center, dialing Liam's number. Need a quick consultation. You're friends with the guy from the Filming Health Commission, aren't you? Aide, this isn't about cardio. More about infection control and fencing, he said briefly. Just tell me that you are not getting involved in the black market for vaccines. Nothing criminal. Purely prevention. And he pressed, hang up. 40 minutes later, he was sitting in the office of a private lawyer's office. The walls were upholstered in gray leather, and the smell of expensive tobacco hid the slight tang of ozone from the air conditioning. Attorney Kate Hart, a corporate risk specialist, listened to Aiden's plan with a thin smile. Do you need to stop filming without direct publicity? No noise. The producer should simply lose the location for one day. If the shooting fails, the advertising schedule will collapse, payments will be frozen under the force majeure clause. For this, a hint of the problem of sanitary clearance is enough. The city of La gets very nervous if a film crew gathers in a private home with an open fire and exposed, skin. How long will it take? A couple of signatures, 3 calls, an official inspection. But we will need a special complaint. I have an anonymous name, Aiden said coldly, and the following flashed through his head. Cardiocoast, a nickname given by chance. Over the next few days, he acted methodically, as if in an operation. He drafted a letter on behalf of the non-existent Neighborhood Committee for the Moral Safety of the Bel Air neighborhood. Attached to the letter were photographs of the studio van, which he himself had taken the day before near the mansion where Katie was pre-casting. The package included a printout of the stream footage. Skin, light, string whip, everything that can be regarded as potentially traumatic. The night before the key shoot, he was sitting in a car 2 streets down from the set. Through the gap between the curtains of another house, the spotlights of the production team could be seen. At about 4:30 in the morning, a white pickup truck with the LA logo pulled up. Safety and fire inspection. An inspector in a helmet came out of the car with a tablet. Aiden leaned back in his seat. The first blow was struck. Katie returned home in the evening earlier than usual. He watched through the camera as she walked through the living room, kicking off her shoes like wings. Her face was pale, her lips were compressed. She threw her bag on the sofa, opened her laptop, and checked her email. The temperature of her tension was transmitted through the screen. Her left thigh trembled, her fingers tapped on the lid. A notification from the bank flickered on Aiden's wrist camera. An incoming payment from Eris Pictures canceled. In the evening, he served dinner pasta with basil, just like on their honeymoon. How was your day? He asked, as if it was just another ordinary Thursday. Katie winced, but smiled tensely. Boring. The client postponed the filming, she said, trying not to make eye contact. Are you okay? Certainly. She lowered her eyes to the plate. I'm just tired. He didn't ask any more questions. Their entire kitchen was filled with an elastic silence, that special type of silence that presses on the eardrums, as if there were crickets singing there, audible only to one. Late at night, the cameras in the studio turned on, but the ring light remained dark. Katie sat on a chair, wrapping her feet in a blanket, and flipped through her e-wallet balance. The amount on the left has decreased by almost a third. She clenched her fingers until her knuckles turned white. Then she closed the laptop, leaned her forehead against her knees, and simply breathed for a long time, as if she was afraid of bursting into tears. In the morning, he noticed new circles under her eyes. Katie hesitantly offered breakfast, but even the smell of gingerbread did not hide the note of burnt caramel. Slightly trembling hands briefly overexposed the sugar in the pan. He, pretending not to notice, helped cut the lemons, collecting every tremor with the needles of the connected cameras. 2 days later, a letter arrived from Black's lawyer, polite and dry. Studio losses due to an unscheduled inspection amounted to a significant amount. We are forced to suspend the next tranche until the schedule is re-agreed and the clauses of your agreement are reviewed. Katie sat over this letter for almost an hour, either rubbing her temples or trying to find an answer. In the end, she only wrote, "I understand. Give me time." Aiden watched without interfering. He listened to the sounds of her steps, to the frequency of the keys, to the way she broke off her nails. Her shuffling on the surface of the table was caught by a fast, small microphone. They had dinner in the garden. The wind rustled the palm leaves, the aroma of the grill mixed with the scent of jasmine. He poured the wine, toasting the new stage of her career. Katie barely touched the glass, as if she was afraid that a sip would break the fragile balance inside her. "Sometimes changes for the better come in the most unfortunate guise," he said, holding his glass up to the light. "You're right." She nodded, but her eyes remained empty. At night, when the house fell asleep, Aiden opened the recorded fragments for the last 3 days. In one of the files, Katie was talking to someone on her cell phone while walking in circles around the studio. "No, Julian, I didn't know that the location would be banned. The check is a surprise for everyone. No, Blake is alive. Yes, I'll get a new place. I just need a week." Pause. "James, he will understand everything." Her voice trembled. "I'll decide, I promise." James, Wildfire, the same tattoo of the letter K. Aiden felt the gears of another guess meshing. But now it was just data, another number in a table. With the first blow, he knocked out the support of the income. Next is observing the cracks. At dawn, he stood at the kitchen window when Katie, confused and exhausted, went down to get water. The moonlit, soft light of the electric lamps illuminated the contours of her collarbones, making the skin thin, almost transparent. She opened the refrigerator and held the decanter in her hands for a long time, as if she did not dare to drink. "Are you awake?" she asked. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts. You too." "Same." She closed the refrigerator. "Just work. A bit of nerves. Do you want to tell me something?" "Then," she snapped in a whisper, and then, as if having come to her senses, she added, "Everything will be decided." He silently handed her the glass. Their fingers touched. A pulse raced through his veins, but he did not flinch. Silence enveloped the kitchen again. When she left, he lingered, looking at his reflection in the black glass of the window. The facial features seemed alien, as if they, too, were a project from the director's script. He had already filmed the first scene unconditionally, calmly. There were 40 minutes left before dawn, but the house was already cool, like an operating room before the start of a cut. The tar coffee cooled when the first lines appeared on the white laptop screen. "A woman lives a double life. During the day, an ideal wife. At night, an icon of desires, known only by the whisper of anthracite chambers." Aiden stopped and raised his fingers to his temples. The noise in my head died down, becoming a clear rhythm. Sex fame fall. The plan came suddenly, like a blip on an X-ray, to make a film about her, using her own truth as the script. This was not revenge in the usual sense of the word. He saw it as a surgical operation on their marriage, a thin cut to expose the pus. If she hid herself behind the lenses, he would bring her story into the spotlight, but under his control, frame by frame, like in an operating room. He came to this idea when he reread the line from the chat, "Muse will be gentle if you deserve the warmth." He inserted the phrase into the finale of the first act without changing a single syllable. The evidence raw folder already contained hundreds of megabytes of clips, screenshots, and schedules. Now they turned into research. He took an old tripod out of the basement closet and placed it in front of the cork board. On it, like an arterial diagram, multicolored threads spread out. Prologue swimming pool, moving, bright facade. Act I secret webcam, mask, nickname Scarlet Muse. Act Roman 2 agreement with the producer, filming is disrupted, money is frozen. Act Roman 3 the wall of lies collapses, the heroine loses everything except her thirst to be seen. He wrote the name of the project in the middle with a red marker, dual exposure. He worked at night while Katie slept in a restless sleep, riddled with fear. In the silence of the office, he reviewed the notes, wrote down the lines, marking the time code, where her shoulders shook when she laughed a little louder than the chat required. where she looked in the mirror for a long time and did not touch the mask, as if she was afraid to tear off her second skin. During the day, he began storyboarding. Quick pencil sketches, signed "Coup" for close-up, is for medium. I put medical marks in the margins, BP when her breathing quickened or tremor, noting the trembling of the hands. The film became both an anatomy of her secrets and a dissection of his own tormenting questions. It took him 2 weeks to transform the chaotic archive into a coherent structure. He displayed the final map on the living room wall during the empty hours while Katie was away to meetings. Each point routed to one of her real-life locations, a coffee shop dusk to dawn, home of producer Juliana Black, car service with a wolfish smile of a loader. The first time he held a complete draft in his hands, his heartbeat sounded like the clicking of a projector mechanism. He printed out the document, tied it with red string, and named it version 0.9. Each scene was an exact copy of her nights, only the names were changed. Catherine became Ashley Ray, Eden Dr. Weil, James Wild Fever. Above the last page he wrote, "The cardiogram of trust is flat. Defibrillation is required." He arranged the casting in a familiar, dimly lit studio on Melrose Avenue, where commercials for Polite Studios were filmed on weekdays. He told the site owner that he was looking for faces for an experimental drama about toxic fame. More than 400 applications were sent to dual exposure casting. He immediately deleted those who sent designer selfies in a glamorous bouquet. He needed mirrors. For the heroine, he was looking for a tone of voice that could float from tenderness to command in half a phrase. He listened to the demolition with his eyes closed until he suddenly shuddered. The microphone picked up a soft shard of laughter that he knew by heart. The actress's name was Raven Miller, the same barista from Dusk to Dawn, with silver dreadlocks. On the screen, she read a monologue from Dogville, but her breathing carried the same ragged music that Katie sometimes used to soften the harshness of the word no. At the in-person audition, Raven walked in wearing a dark blue sheath dress with her hair tied up. "Scene 12, he said, handing out the page. "Muse will be gentle." She read the line, and the studio became crowded, as if the walls remembered the drink she brewed in the morning. He noted in his notebook, "Coincidence? No. Symmetry." The role of the young man, a reflection of himself, was played by a 26-year-old actor named Dylan Hayes. In the diffused light of the lamps, his profile reminded Aiden of a university photo. High forehead, thin nose, eyes filled with calm determination. Dylan played a scene where the hero notices links to his wife's stream on his phone. As he said, "Every pixel is a scar between us," he accidentally bit his lip, just as Aiden himself did when he first discovered the video. "Have you encountered real betrayal?" Aiden asked after the take. "One day," Dylan admitted quietly, "my ex-girlfriend had a whole second life on TikTok. I made a short film to speak out." Aiden nodded. The universe provided an actor who had already survived the necessary wound. He drew up the contract quickly. 3 weeks of rehearsals, 2 weekends of filming, agreement to a minimalist setting. He didn't explain that the set had been in place for a long time. A kitchen with a marble island, a balcony overlooking palm trees, a studio with a ring lamp. On the first day of reading the script, the actors sat at a long table with only a single lamp hanging above it. The air conditioner was on in the corner, exactly the same tone as in the Reeves house. "Here, every line is reduced to a fact," Aiden explained in an even voice. "No improvisation. You are shadows of people who have already said this. Our job is to capture the truth before it disappears." Raven leafed through the text, sometimes freezing at the stage directions. "Is this based on documentary records?" You can say yes. "And she knows?" she asked without looking up. The silence stretched like a surgical suture. "Not yet." He cut off the phrase with surgical clarity, "but he will find out." Rehearsals took place in the pavilion, where he reproduced their living room. A marble island, a copy of the slab, even a fake pool made of mirror panels. He arranged the furniture centimeter by centimeter, guided by photographs from the cameras. For the 017 scene, he hired a lighting technician to make the lamp cast exactly the same whitish halo as in Katie's studio. Raven donned a scarlet corset. When the lacing was tightened, an electric frost ran through the hall. Dylan turned on the laptop, bringing up the old chat window, not real, but copied. "Good night, my fiery ones," Raven said in a velvety half-whisper, and a barely perceptible shiver ran down Aiden's spine. The intonation matched perfectly. An hour later, they were rehearsing the scene where Dr. Whale discovers the bank letter about the canceled contract. Dylan, sitting at the same table as Katie, hit the View Details button. His face turned pale, he closed his eyelids, and a small tremor ran through his fingers. The wing of his breath froze in Aiden's chest. The pain was real, as if a new wound coincided with an old scar. He photographed the storyboard. Each frame on an iPad was combined with references from Evidence Raw. By evening, the file had turned into a GIF, Scene 14, Filming Disruption. In the images, Raven held her shaking hands to her temples, just like Katie did before the letter from Juliana Black. Coincidence turns into tracing paper. He felt the sweet taste of control. One more step, and the mirror would become a confessional. During the third week of rehearsals, he transferred the actors to a real house under the guise of a real location. Katie said she was going on a yoga retreat to recharge. The catering inspector, bribed in advance, prescribed a schedule, filming a documentary art project without commercial gain. Neither Raven nor Dylan knew that there were still cameras hidden in the living room. They only felt the unusual precision of the set design. Bandages in a drawer, the same set of glasses, a blue pillow with Dream Big embroidered. The first scene on location is dinner on the terrace. Raven put a plate of pasta on the table and said, "How was your day?" "Boring," Dylan replied, playing. The client postponed the shooting. Aiden listened to the remark from behind the lens, and the room was covered with a thin film of déjà vu. He understood every millimeter of pause between words. That's exactly how, at that moment, they lost each other. He waited for the actors to finish the scene, then stepped out from behind the camera. "It feels like a false alarm," he said evenly. "This is the moment where the fuse burns." "Don't smile at the end of a sentence, Raven. It looks like there's blood on your tongue." She repeated, and this time a chill ran through Aiden's veins. The copy became the original. The next day was the cold coffee stage. Dylan walked into the kitchen, picked up a cup, and slowly poured the drink. The scene was controlled by memory. A month and a half ago, Aiden stood exactly there, not understanding why the aroma of coffee was irritating and not warming. "Stop," he said and pointed to the cup. "Hands shake less. You are not yet sure that the truth is so terrible. Add half a spoonful of sugar." This is how he tried to feel the taste. Raven was surprised to catch the director's gaze, as if he was directing not an actor, but a mirror image of his own gestures. Later, during the break, Dylan came over. "Doc, forgive me for being blunt, but it seems like you're filming someone's real biography. Isn't art stealing reality from all of us?" Aiden answered without looking up from his notes. "If she finds out, it will ruin someone's life." "Sometimes you have to open the heart to save it," Aiden said, and the phrase sounded like a sentence. In the evening, when the sun lay like a golden ribbon on the surface of the pool, they rehearsed the climax of the second act. The hero turns on hidden cameras and sees his wife live Scarlet Muse. Dylan sat on the same couch where Aiden had once clutched his phone. Raven, wearing a red corset, unfastened the lamp, revealing a cold orbit of light. The spotlight illuminated her back. The comma-like mole on her shoulder blade a spot that Aiden had kissed countless times. "Every pixel is our scar," Dylan croaked, his voice breaking. At that moment, Aiden realized that the camera lenses were not catching a game, but genuine pain fresh, like a cut. He turned off the recording and closed his eyes for a moment. "My cheeks were burning, even though there was air conditioning in the room." He achieved precision down to a nervous tick. Now the mirrors did not reflect, but doubled. Raven brushed her hair and walked over. "Are you sure this is just a movie?" He looked through it and saw two figures at once. the actress and the wife. One responsible for the truth, the other for lies, and both breathed his air. A film in which there will be no takes, Aiden answered. At night, he reviewed the footage. His past faded and appeared on the screen, but with new faces. He understood, once the picture was completed, it would be impossible to return the secret back to the dust of the archives. History will find its own lungs, like an organism on a table after a heart transplant. He saved the edit with the title Rough Cut Hash 1. I put a flash drive with Katie's original recordings next to it. Intertwined like duplicates of DNA, they were waiting for the moment when they would meet in one projection, and then the masks would fall off for everyone. While the house slept, he wrote the last scene. The hero shows his wife a film about her, and she watches, unable to look away. Aiden clicked the save button and closed the laptop. His plan went beyond the script. The actors were now playing, but the main actress, the one he had turned the camera to from the very beginning, would soon come out. Outside, the wind moved the palm trees as if someone was flipping through a film. In this crisp silence, Aiden heard his own heart, beating exactly 60 beats per minute, a perfect sine wave before the defibrillator electrode touched his chest. Since the end of the rehearsal week, the house has felt like a bubble, stretched between three realities: the film set, Katie's hidden studio, and Aiden's silent vantage point. He no longer distinguished between what was decor and what was genuine. His fingers themselves found tiny recesses on the walls in which the lenses were hidden. The next stage required a wide stage and audience, and he prepared it as carefully as a sterile table before surgery. First of all, he created a new Telegram user at Reenacting. The avatar set up a blurry frame, dark hair, a red corset cord, the glow of a ring lamp. Added to the signature, Secrets of the West Coast, only for our own, 21 plus. I joined 10 closed sex chats where they asked for a recommendation or donation for entry. He paid with crypto, making sure the coins could not be traced back to his bank account. Then he posted the first batch of files, short GIFs, just the kind that spread easily. Fingers sliding over the skin, smiling mask, fire emojis flicker in echoes of other people's praises. Exclusive material, he wrote, real news from Los Angeles. Access to full archives upon request. He left invisible tags inside the lines. #Westhills, #private pool, #velvet kiss. Any search engine with due persistence could associate flexible leads with a movie announcement Eris pictures. He wanted the lead to be found, but not too quickly like a mole that first itches and then becomes inflamed. A day later, 10 requests for the entire archive arrived. He responded selectively, giving the leaked videos to the admins of groups with the most scandalous reputations. Those who remained were asked to distribute links with caution, without open light. They, of course, did not listen. The next tool is the press. Aiden remembered Annie Lowell, a journalist for the independent portal Lay in Depth. He had once given her a comment on a rare case of transplantation. The virtual cutting enthusiast brought up his mobile phone in 3 clicks, and then sent him a letter of gratitude. He found a contact and sent a message through a one-time VoIP account. Leak about a network of underground sex streams. The girl under the nickname Scarlet Muse appears in the contract with producer Julian Black. Double-entry bookkeeping, tax evasion, and elements of coercion are possible. Are you interested? The letter included a PDF with torn-out pages of the contract and screenshots of the group at Red Leaks. Subscribed Concerned Insider. I knew that a real reporter would not ignore the word coercion and the shadow of an underground film star. 8 hours later, Annie replied, checking. We need confirmation. He sent out 2 phone numbers for the production assistant, leaving room to search. Signature, I'll prove it later, not a word to the police. So he tied the journalist and the drain, but kept his distance like a surgeon without touching a wound sews up blood vessels. The last figure is the fan. To do this, he used the same freelance exchange on which Katie caught customers for watercolors. Created a work. An actress is needed for a performance in a coffee shop. The role is a devoted fangirl of an illustrator. The scenario is simple. Come up, enthusiastically ask about online work, ask for an autograph, leave a gift. Cash payment, unknown short film documenting joy. A brunette with green eyes named Lana, a directing student, responded. He sent her a photo of Katie in the past light waves of hair, feather earrings, and the text by heart. I love your style so much, especially the Red Wing series. I'm in the Muse Lovers fan group. I found out about your new film. Lana was supposed to come to dusk to dawn exactly at 11:12, when Katie usually took her second latte. In the bag, there is a flash drive, like a collection of fan art. In fact, there are duplicates of draft streams, compressed into a Fire password archive. If Katie opens the files, she will see herself through the eyes of other people's viewers, a montage without cuts. Chats, donations, close-ups of skin. Aiden planned to hit her with his own reputation by returning the mirror's face. On Thursday morning, Katie left the house wearing ripped denim, a sign that it was going to be a hot day. Aiden kissed her temple and returned to the monitors. The coffee shop camera was shared. He cracked the password using the admin 123 standard. Small business owners rarely change the code. At 11:09, a white backpack with a sunset patch flashed into the frame. 3 more minutes and Katie appeared, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear. Lana arrived on schedule, her eyes shining with the light of rehearsed courage. The sound was weak, but Aiden heard the intonation. Admiration, a slight trembling when someone meets an idol. Katie smiled, tentatively at first, then wider. He saw his wife straighten her collar and take the flash drive. The fan took a selfie, hugged her, and left. An hour later, already in the studio, Katie inserted the drive. Aiden's server sent a notification. New device connected to USB port #2. The next 20 minutes dragged on in thick syrup. Katie sat in front of the screen, her lips moving. Sometimes she would lean back, cover her mouth with her hand, then shake her head. When the recording reached the scene with the bank letter, she closed the laptop lid and stood up. But her legs gave way, and she sank to the floor next to the chair like a downed bird. She didn't broadcast that night. The camera caught her going to the bedroom earlier than usual. She took out old pajamas with sheep clothes of comfortable times. The next morning, the circles under my eyes became deep. She found her husband in the kitchen, cooking oatmeal. "Why are you so early?" she asked, her voice becoming hoarse. "I have no idea," he laughed, touching her waist. "It seems that the body is tired of sleeping late. What about you?" "Nothing, just a strange day. All my social networks squeak like spam. Did they break it? Maybe." A friend wrote, "Some channels with my pictures." She lowered her gaze. "Probably fake." "Maybe." The word hung between them like gas under an anesthetic mask. He turned on the radio to drown out the pulse pounding in his ears. The presenter discussed the new wave of sex studio scandals. The name Juliana Black has not yet been mentioned, but the story mentioned an anonymous insider leak of the West Coast sex network. In the afternoon, he received a letter from Annie Lowell. "The material has been confirmed. Black declines to comment. Publication tomorrow. If you have new details, please send them. The source will remain protected." He leaned back in his chair, allowing the corners of his lips to twitch. Defibrillation had begun. Katie's phone was ringing off the hook every few minutes. Notifications, subscription requests, some strange "thank you for inspiration." She turned off the sound, but the vibration still beat like a dragonfly under the upholstery of the sofa. After lunch, she tried to write a sketch for the upcoming children's project, but her hand was shaking and the lines were breaking. In the evening, she admitted, "It seems someone hacked my payment account. Big losses. Translations are stuck. Just weird. Pause. And another girl in the coffee shop today. She knew too much." Aiden frowned sympathetically, internally recording the new expression in her eyes, the nervous sliding of the pupils when a person is looking for an invisible pursuer. At night, he checked Telegram. Red Muselik's subscribers had doubled. The group lived like wildfire. Someone posted a table of donations found in the browser cache. Admin added a vote. Should we expect a movie starring Muse? Under the post, there are hundreds of fire emoticons. Katie walked along the corridor barefoot, as if checking to see if the glass was crunching under her feet. Her jaw trembled. Sometimes she would stop in front of the mirror and touch the skin on her neck, as if she wanted to make sure there was no noose there. In the mirror, he saw not only her fear, but also symmetry with the actress Raven. She looked the same during rehearsals when she read the loss of fame scene. As morning approached, Katie took her suitcase out of the closet and threw a pile of clothes on the floor. Aiden watched from behind the slightly open door. Her movements were chaotic. The fabrics past the suitcase were like leaves in the wind. He walked in as if he had just woken up. "Where are you going?" "To Tess in Minnesota. I need silence." "What's happened?" "Don't know. Everything is falling apart. Filming was stopped, money was stuck, some people were writing nasty things. Tears flashed, but did not fall. It's like someone is hunting me." He sat down next to her and let his palm rest on hers. "We are together. Let's figure it out." She glanced sideways, as if trying to find a traitor in his gaze, but I saw only endless fatigue and, perhaps, a drop of melancholy. She closed the suitcase as if realizing the futility of flight. She did not leave the room the entire next day. He heard the fingerprint scanner on her laptop work, the tabs closing, the keys clicking. The cameras recorded this without sound, but he felt tension, as if strings were being pulled in the walls. In the evening, Katie came down. The face was pale, but the gaze was firm. "If someone tries to break me with a scandal," she said, sitting down opposite, "I won't hide. I'll find out who it is." He slowly raised his eyes from his cup. Their pupils met like two ends of one needle. "I'm nearby," he answered quietly. Outside the windows, a purple sunset thickened, like the glow of a fire. The phone rang into this hot silence. Katie's screen flashed. Unknown number. She clicked accept and put it on speakerphone. "Mrs. Muse?" The female voice drew out the syllables, sweetly honeyed. "We are from Heat Vision magazine. Are you commenting on the new leak about your contract with Black? They write that you were portrayed as a poor actress who lost her income due to an inspection. This is true?" Katie immediately froze. She glanced at her husband, the first glimmer of suspicion reflected in her eyes. Aiden put down his cup and slowly covered the phone's microphone with his palm. There was tension in the kitchen, loud and heavy. The crystal bracelets of the chandelier reflected the light so generously, as if the house had a personal Northern Lights. A rumor spread around the neighborhood that Dr. Aiden Reeves and his charming artist wife had decided to treat their newfound community to a little dinner. In fact, the table was set for 22 people. The wine list was longer than the list of dishes. Katie stood at the living room window, holding a glass of Chardonnay in both hands, like a reliquary containing holy relics, too tightly not to shake. It was the third day after the call from Heat Vision, and the Red Muselix feeds had swelled by 1,000 subscribers. The thought was spinning in my head. Someone is tightening the noose, but she kept her face impeccably tender, like creamy ganache on macaron. Aiden, in an immaculate tuxedo, greeted guests at the entrance. Gallant half-bows, a light joke about the horrors of parking in Beverly Hills, an offer of antipasty, everything was done with the surgical precision with which he was accustomed to moving heart valves. "Honey, play the music," Katie asked, trying to keep her voice from sounding too mechanical. "Of course." He pressed on the tablet screen, and the jazzy duo of saxophone and vibraphone flowed from the speakers, a relaxing, cool combination like an ice cube on the skin of his wrist. Gathered around the table were neighbors, medical colleagues, a couple of gallery owners whom Katie knew from Instagram, and a new guest, a clean-shaven man in rimless glasses, whom Troy had invited from the house across the street. His name was Mark Sawyer. He introduced himself as a media law consultant. Because of his round smile and smooth finger movements, Katie decided that he looked like a psychotherapist, the kind that stars invite for intensive sessions on balancing brand and stress. The first toast was standard. Troy was full of compliments on his choice of Burat Mousse. They laughed and clinked glasses. Katie forcefully pasted another smile onto her face, like an applique. As soon as the music changed to a smoother one, she felt something sink in the pit of her stomach. Aiden's eyes caught her too seriously for a second. There was not a shadow of anxiety in the husband's pupils, only pure, icy transparency. Closer to dessert, the conversation slipped into mild obscenity. Mark relished something about bold trends in VOD platforms. And then Aiden, taking a sip of burgundy, said almost lazily, "Mark, do you also consult with the adult entertainment industry? Have you heard that something like art bondage is in vogue now?" The words adult entertainment slipped through the air like a thin silken knife. Several guests raised their eyebrows. Gallery owner Lauren giggled lightly, but the neighboring couple, on the contrary, froze. Katie felt her heart drop into her heels. For a moment, I felt the urge to reach for the glass, but my hand did not obey. She caught the light aroma of a jasmine diffuser, mixed with a new smell bitter, metallic, as if someone had crushed a battery inside. Mark wiped the corners of his lips with a napkin and nodded softly. Yes, the market for streaming and alternative productions has grown by 27%. People are looking for spice. The border seems to be blurred, but in fact it becomes clearer. Interesting, Aiden interjected. I recently saw an analytical note. The most popular subgenre now is home productions with elements of discipline and masks. He moved his wrist as if drawing an invisible lacing line. They involve. What did they say? Real people with hidden fame. The fork clinked on the porcelain. Katie didn't listen enough, abruptly putting the cutlery down. Some guests were amused by the subtle provocation. Drunken neighbor Pendergast grinned. What, a cure for the boredom of marriage? Pain is often covered with velvet, Aiden continued softly, as if reading an aphorism from an old collection. And the most piquant thing is when this velvet is slightly lifted. The room was filled with intense curiosity. Someone coughed, and gallery owner Lauren leaned back in her chair, raising her eyebrows over the rim of her glass. Katie tried to interrupt and change the topic. Lauren, how was the ceramics exhibition you were talking about? Her voice trembled at the word exhibition. Oh, antique varnish on burnt skin is almost erotic, Lauren answered with sincere animation. Speaking of skin. The laughter at the table broke into small, flickering sparks. Aiden turned his head to his wife, like a teacher to a student who is ready, but lost on a difficult syllable. Darling, he said in that even, slightly louder voice than necessary to cover the general noise, you didn't tell me how artists explore the body through performance. Katie touched the pearl pendant at her throat, feeling that the pearl was hotter than her skin. Yes, sometimes the body is a canvas. He nodded sympathetically. And sometimes the canvas desires a firmer touch of the brush, right? Troy laughed, and his neighbor Pendergast slammed his fist on the table in approval. But several people looked at each other, as if an icy draft blew from under the table. By the way, Aiden continued as if by chance, has anyone heard about the film Velvet Kiss? An indie production that appears to have been filmed in Bel Air. The plot is about a girl who teaches drawing to children during the day, and at night becomes the muse of the entire West Coast. He shrugged his shoulders informationally. A sensation for film festivals. The emptiness hit Katie in the solar plexus like a stone. She tried to stay in the present, but her husband's words formed like shattered glass, cutting into memory. Girl. At night, muse. Lana, the fake fan, popped up with her flash drive for inspiration. The phone is full of notifications, burning memories of the call. Are you commenting on the leak? Aiden poured himself more wine. Not a drop was wasted. It's interesting how characters with double lives hide in plain sight. Masks, lamps, a scarlet corset. After all, it won't tell the average person anything. After a pause, he raised his glass. For art, friends, for the brave artists who risk their bodies for eternal glory. The crunch of glasses merged into one clink, but Katie did not raise hers. The hand moved forward, but stopped as if it had hit a glass wall. There was a blush on his face, not a shade of sparkling, but a heat as the temperature rapidly rose. Lauren quietly whispered to Mark, "Is this about the real story?" He only raised one eyebrow in the affirmative, as if he knew more than he said. Aiden then gently changed his tone, redirecting the guest's attention to the marzipan cake, which is hard to find even in Milan. The laughter returned, the conversation dived into innocent waves, but Katie couldn't hear the taste anymore. After dessert, Mark, smiling, asked the hostess, "Kat, you illustrate children's books, right? How do you manage to keep a balance with such performances as your husband mentioned?" The room became so quiet for a moment that the tape of the tablecloth clicked under someone's elbow. Aiden made a slight apologetic movement with his shoulder, as if he was apologizing for someone else's curiosity, but a cold spark burned in his eyes. Katie looked away towards the pool, where the reflected light swayed. "Every story has a contrast," she said. "Light makes shadows deeper." The phrase sounded fragile and decisive. However, even the wording itself was reminiscent of a line from her stream. He remembered it verbatim. The guests rose from the table, moving to the veranda for Calvados. Troy patted Aiden on the shoulder. "Brilliant conversation. You know how to light it up." "I'm just playing with words," he replied, a smile softly falling on the marble of his face. As the guests disappeared onto the patio, Katie remained at the table collecting plates. Aiden helped, moving silently. His hand lightly touched her wrist. She shuddered. "Today she began, but swallowed the end of the sentence as if chewing a shard of ice. "Unpredictable," he prompted quietly. She shook her head. "A tiny drop of sweat rolled down my neck and disappeared under my collar." The Helios media office occupied an entire floor of a skyscraper near Sunset Boulevard. The walls were covered with soft oak paneling, and heavy tablets with the logos of streaming giants lay on the glossy tables. Producer Nora Craze, serpentine in a cobalt dress, leafed through the synopsis and tapped her fingernail on the silk bow of her pen, a habit that allowed directors to understand that she was interested in the material. "Housewife," she said, as if testing the word for acidity. "Pseudo-doc, a mixture of art harassment and family drama. Where does such a living nerve come from?" Aiden, sitting opposite, shrugged. "I'm a medical consultant." The screenwriter wished to remain anonymous. "The story is fictional, but thoroughly human." Nora noted, "Consultant, this means that the details were approached as if they were a biopsy. The heroine's double life is intriguing. During the day, a freelance artist, at night, a webcam star. This will rock the market. But you need proof links, stream chat, financial trap, chart. Everything is in packages on a flash drive," Aiden answered, moving a thin metal envelope towards her. The Dual Exposure LLC logo looked like a brand of accessories, not over-the-top revelations. The producer inserted the drive into the tablet. A presentation opened on the screen, storyboard frames, lines, facts about how heroine sells her body to pay for a house in a prestigious area. Nora leafed further, and on the 15th page her lips trembled. There was a photo reference: pool, night, ring lamp, red corset. The photo seemed artistic, but too vivid to be generated. "Recognizable," she whispered. "What if a real couple recognizes themselves? The easier it will be for marketing," Aiden retorted. "A mystery always sells more than a fact." The transaction took less than an hour. Helios Media bought the full package: script, storyboard, naming rights. The amount is 6 figures, enough to block any other project with a similar story, including Black's actual film. When Aiden signed the non-disclosure agreement, Nora stood up and extended her hand. "We'll change a couple of details, but we'll leave the nerves." The streaming platform will premiere in the fall, with a teaser in 3 weeks. He left the office and allowed himself a rare luxury: a deep breath of heat mixed with gasoline. From now on, Housewife lived on its own. No mask will save the original when the copy goes on banners. Katie woke up early in the morning to the discreet vibrations of her phone. There are dozens of notifications with notes on the home screen: "Canceled" and "Payment hold." She opened the mail. Studio Eris Pictures reported that the Velvet Kiss project was put on an indefinite pause due to a potential image conflict. Letter from another company, Moonforge, terminated the contract, citing risks of reputational coincidences. She jumped up, almost knocking over her cup of iced tea onto the keyboard. Risks of coincidences? What are the coincidences? The heart beat like a hammer on a glass flask. In the actress's Discord chat, colleagues wondered why 3 studios froze the popular pseudo-art house. Someone wrote about the script being leaked to a large service, where the heroine is suspiciously similar to the real muse. Katie went to Red Muselix. There were twice as many groups. There they discussed a teaser that seemed to be about to be released. Housewife, the story of an ideal wife leading a secret erotic cult. The fans' fury flared up under the post. Some shouted about plagiarism, others about free advertising, and others were waiting for real leaks from Muse, not a Hollywood fake. But every comment cut her like sandpaper. Too recognizable, she has the same pool, and the red corset is exactly the same. Check the mole on her shoulder blade. At noon, the manager called Dagger. Katri, sweetheart, your name is poisonous now. Advertisers want distance and are afraid of judgment. We'll wait a couple of months, then release, if they don't raise a lawsuit. What lawsuit? She walked in circles around the studio until her feet got tangled in the camera cable. Big streamers have already started to help. They say your story is exclusive to them. Apparently, someone sold the script as a carbon copy. We are waiting for letters from lawyers. She passed out, feeling foggy in her head. Her gaze fell on the ring lamp. The reflection of the body in the cold arc of light always seemed like armor to her. Today, the Wild J fire amulet did not burn. The donation panel was empty. She started the broadcast, hoping to confirm the loyalty of the fan circle, but the online audience barely exceeded 70 people. Previously, there were 700. The chat was filled with thorns. Is it true that you sold out to Netflix? Where is the real content, not the trailers? Your producer cheated us out of donations. Katie closed the camera. Her heart fled like a disheveled sparrow that was caught by the wing. The door slammed in the hallway, and Aiden returned earlier than usual. "Why are you at home?" she asked, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "I changed the shift." He put a bag of Thai food on the table. It seemed like we hadn't had lunch together for a long time. She sat up, holding the fork like a scalpel, ready to operate on herself. "Studios are clinging to me. They say my story has already been sold. Someone is stealing my life, spreading it." The voice broke. "I didn't sign anything." "Pirates," he said calmly. "Now everyone is stealing content. Have you seen the news about the upcoming movie Housewife? They say it's a revolutionary plot." She succumbed to a fit of trembling. Too familiar. Lips turned white. It's as if someone was watching, recording, and now selling it. He held out a paper napkin and smiled so softly that the smile seemed like a blanket. "Agree, the world is full of couples with similar secrets. Coincidences are not a reason to think that the world revolves around us." The words extinguished her panic on an external level, but the ash settled inside. The strange calm of her husband became another door that she could not open. Late at night, she checked documents, trying to find where information might have leaked. Suddenly, a pop-up notification filled the screen. Helios Media press release. Housewife is based on a true story that explores the dark side of the quest for fame. Below the text is a teaser poster. The silhouette of a woman in a red corset stands in front of a bright spotlight with a pool and palm trees behind her. Katie screamed so loudly that the dishes in the house rattled. The sound of footsteps cut into the beating of her heart. Aiden entered the studio. The light from the tablet cast a deathly hue on his face. "Look," she turned the screen. Her eyes sparkled almost madly. "They took my reality. It's me." He leaned forward, getting closer. The subtle aroma of burgundy lotion, which he always used after operating rooms, flashed in the air. "Amazing," he said with a slight mixture of admiration and sympathy. "But are you sure it's you? The posters feature fictional characters." "Corset, lamp, mole," she shouted, as if listing evidence of a crime. "Someone broke into my house." pulled out the footage. Aiden slowly placed his hand on her shoulder. The wife's cold fingers trembled. "Calm down. We will file a complaint. If this is your intellectual property, the lawyer will defend everything." She nodded like a lost child. But after he left, she noticed a light imprint on his wrist, like from the plastic wrapper of a flash drive, the same one he had recently sold. A week later, her mail turned into a minefield: refusals, freezes, changed rates. A rumor spread across the industrial forum. Scarlet Muse is stealing someone else's script. A mainstream release is being prepared. They want hype. PR channels canceled the collaboration, citing a conflict with a major studio. Fans were arguing in the chat about who came first, the movie or reality. The majority, tired of the scandals, left silently. The day the Housewife teaser was released on YouTube was the day of the mirror eclipse. The music was reminiscent of a heart monitor reading, "Here, here, here." The video sequence flickered between a house with white walls, a swimming pool, a ring lamp, a leather corset, and an inscription based on a true obsession. At the end, the face of the actress appeared, alien, but too similar. Gray eyes, slightly raised cheekbones, a trembling smile. Katie sat in front of the screen with her knees pressed together. She tried to feel the air, as if it was already poisoned with chlorine. In streamers' chats, her name flared up like a curse. Muse thief. She lost everything for money. He who lies burns. She called Juliana Black. An assistant answered the phone. "Julian is not going to renegotiate the contract," she said coldly. "History has become toxic. We cannot risk capital. Your reputation is worthless." The words fell like ice and cracked. She closed her eyes and leaned the back of her head against the wall. The silence of the studio became tight, like a tomb. Aiden came in late, quietly, as always. She met him with a gaze full of wandering horror. "Gossip is killing me. I'm losing everything." He gently touched her cheek. "You haven't lost everything. You have me." The voice is smooth, soothing, like morphine. "If I can't work, we'll lose our house. I will sign a second contract with the clinic, take more shifts. Everything will be fine." There was not a drop of anxiety in his tone, only the ideal pulse of a speaker who knows the final diagnosis, but has not yet revealed the whole truth to the patient. That night, as she was randomly scrolling through the internet in search of an explanation, the Helios Media website published a press release. Dr. medical consultant and co-author of Housewife. A photo of Aiden in a surgical gown was accompanied by the caption, "Scientific accuracy of family drama." Katie let out a sob. In black and white, the husband's initials. She reread the line, hoping she was imagining it, but the letters did not blur. The phone rang. Troy desperately whispered that the neighbors had sent a link asking, "Katie, is this about you?" Fellow streamers sent screenshots comparing her mole to the poster. The world put together the puzzle pieces faster than she did. Katie darted down, her bare feet tapping a panicked rhythm on the cold oak floor. The light was on in my husband's office. She opened the door. Aiden was sitting over his laptop as if he was waiting. "It's you," she whispered. "Did you sell my life?" He didn't answer immediately. He closed the document and turned around. For a second, the fatigue of the surgeon after a 24-hour operation flashed in his eyes, but immediately disappeared, giving way to a quiet winter. "This is not about you," he said quietly. "This is a story about how secrets kill love. There is my house, my pool, my words, or the house of 1,000 similar women," he objected. "You wanted fame. Here she is, only the light is brighter than you thought." She took a step back, as if she, not he, had received the blow. "You ruined my work. I just showed the world what you were doing," he whispered. "The truth has always been yours. I'm just a mirror maker." Something collapsed in Katie's chest. She realized that the blow from which she had been reeling all these days had come from the very heart of the house, from the man who now stood in front of her, calm, gallant, cold. Outside, the branches of the palm trees shook in the night wind, as if flapping the wings of a large, invisible raven. The house was still standing on its foundation, but the walls were filled with sound, Not the cracking of plaster, but the elastic buzz of a heavy spotlight, which was pointed directly at her face. And ahead there is only a blinding light, behind which nothing can be hidden. The set resembled the mirror of their mansion, only with the skin removed. The walls were pulled apart by decorators, each lamp was adjusted to illumine, microphones hung openly in places where hidden cameras used to be hidden. Housewife moved from digital pages to flesh and moving shadows, and Aiden in the director's chair, not a consultant, supervised the transformation, as if he was assisting himself in a second operation on the same heart. The first shots were filmed in the living room set. The operator lined up the lens so that the glass of the fireplace reflected the actors with a double glare, the real face and the phantom out of focus. Aiden asked to add half a step from the bottom. This is exactly how the fire of the Reeves house was reflected when Katie rushed between the studio and the bedroom late at night. Raven went to the brand, blue skinny jeans, a stretched sweatshirt, her hair tied up in a messy bun, the daytime version of the heroine. According to the script, she should say, "I'm just tired, honey," turning to the window. Dylan, clutching a porcelain cup in his hands, is an almost exact copy of Aiden 5 months ago. "Stop," Aiden said after the first pass. "When you lie, your eyes don't leave the floor. You're afraid to find a reflection in the glass. Take a break, inhale in a whisper, as if swallowing guilt." Raven nodded and tried again. This time, her breathing faltered in the middle of a sentence, her pupils moved down and to the left, just like the real Katie's when she answered the question about a freelance client. Dylan squeezed the handle of the cup. The earthenware crunched, the microphone caught a thin grinding sound, and the silence in the pavilion became as tight as a vein under a scalpel. "Perfect," Aiden said, his voice as steady as a pulse. "We save the double. Camera B, next scene." Heavy spotlights were moved to the replica 017. Raven donned a scarlet corset. The lacing is tied so tightly at the top that the ribs can barely move. She stepped under the ring lamp, which flashed with cold fluorescent light. Aiden moved closer, testing the angle of the light with his fingers, like a surgeon palpating tissue before cutting. "Remember," he whispered to the actress, "the lie here is subtle. You are not lying to your husband, but to yourself that he will never know. Show the sweetness of risk." Raven brought up a chat window on her laptop, a fake copy of Scarlet Muselive. Aiden watched her fingers type. "Wild fever, darling, I saved the red marks just for you." The camera shutter clutch clicked. He asked for 5 seconds without moving after sending the message so that the pulsating light on her neck would become a separate cue. True Katie in those seconds thought that she had hidden raw adrenaline inside, not realizing that the camera was already writing a confession. The most difficult scene was the confrontation. The bedroom decoration was accurate. The same teak headboard, the same diffuser sconces of lamps with a warm 2700K. According to the script, the heroine holds a bag of cocaine in her hand, the same one that in reality Katie hid in her robe pocket. On the set, Aiden handed Raven a small envelope, a real one, faded. He had it since the first night. The honey lipstick imprint was still turning pink. "Is this real?" The actress was surprised, feeling the crunch of the paper. "Props," he replied without blinking. "Make it clear that the touch burns you." Dylan should walk in, take half a step, ask, "Who is she?" in the same tone in which Aiden once asked a question, squeezing his throat with fear. During rehearsals, the actor sounded sympathetic, but the director demanded steel. "You cut words," Aiden explained. "You understand, a scalpel does not hit, it opens." On the 10th take, Dylan finally delivered the line without shaking, and the air froze. Raven Ashley retreated exactly the same half-step that Katie took when she took her husband's hands off the bag. Horror frozen in her eyes, mixed with the daring hope of still getting out. "We're closing," Aiden ordered. The people around instantly held their breath. He understood. The copy was not just similar, it relieved him of the blind spots of memory. Now he saw the scene from the side, noticed how everything was shaking, which he missed then, sitting in the shadow of the doorway. On the third day of filming, Katie returned home without warning and told Aiden that the yoga class had been canceled. The site was wrapped in a film of confidentiality. He bribed the security in advance. Filming was moved to a pavilion in a warehouse. Only the decorations were left at home, but a warm plume of smoke and cables still hung in the air. Katie walked through the rooms and noticed that the curtains smelled of ozone from halogen lamps, and there were tiny marks of tripod markers on the floorboards. But I didn't dare ask my husband. Meanwhile, Aiden was in the pavilion staging the scene Rite of Worship, a love lie inlaid with affection. Raven was supposed to press her hand to Dylan's chest, drawing a circle with her nail, the gesture the real Katie used to check her husband's wrist for a pulse after a heated argument. "You need to show softness, but there is poison in it," he explained to the actress. "You care about his heart, because if it stops, your secrets will be revealed." The scene turned out to be quiet, sacred. One glance from the director was enough for the zoom lens to slip onto their hands. On the monitor, the actors' wet fingers looked like a lunar plexus of veins. After each difficult scene, Raven smoked a cigarette in the technical corridor. One day, she caught Aiden by the shoulder. "I understand that I'm playing your wife, but you direct as if you're cutting yourself too. Isn't it dangerous?" He exhaled and looked at the thin stream of smoke. "The surgeon heals others by cutting. Sometimes this is how he treats his scars." She threw away the cigarette butt and crushed it with her sock. "Are you sure that no one except your wife will recognize you? The replicas are too real." "Let them find out," he said quietly. "The echo of truth sounds louder than any advertising." During the 5th week of filming, Aiden changed the schedule. The filmed burgundy dinner scene was intended to replay the evening party when he first played a prank on Katie. He moved the filming to a real house, convincing the producers that the nature was unique. The scenery required minimal changes. It was only necessary to add light stands on the outside of the windows. He called the catering service, ordered the same salad with burrata, and duplicated the marzipan cake. Katie noticed activity in the house, the clinking of cutlery, and the crowd of technicians. Her heart began to beat like an alarming weather vane. She walked over to Aiden, who was setting up a monitor in a tuxedo. "What's happening?" "Just an art house shoot," he smiled softly. "I agreed to give the pavilion. But this is our home. The location is unique," he said, without taking his eyes off the exposure meter. Only in the evening did she see the actors. Raven, in a cobalt dress, laughed with the film crew, and Dylan stood next to her, such a strange feeling, as if she was looking at her husband 10 years younger. Katie's legs felt stiff and her mouth tasted rusty. Aiden, as if sensing his gaze, approached. "Meet the actors. We're making a story about the breakdown of trust." She tried to smile. Raven extended her hand. "It's a great honor to work in a real house that inspired the writers." The words thundered like a drum. Real. Inspired. As they began, Aiden placed Katie behind the monitor, the best angle, he said. She saw the actor husband shaking a glass of burgundy, the actress wife doing a laugh line, and a pearl pendant glistening on her neck, exactly like hers. Take after take, Aiden captured on film every lie she ever uttered. "The client postponed filming. I have work. It's just an art collab." With each fictitious answer, Katie twitched along with the screen as if a band-aid was being torn from her skin. As the camera clicked for the last time, Raven said, "Ready. Divine material." Aiden nodded, looking at the monitor. In the reflection, Katie noticed how his eyes warmed for the first time in many days, not towards her, but towards the finished scene. At night, she could not sleep. "The actor's lines were buzzing in my head. The truth is rarely kind." She left the bedroom, quietly walked into the studio, and turned on the laptop. I opened Housewife on IMDb. The release date and the name of the co-author were already there, E. Reeves, Maryland. She closed the lid and covered her ears with her palms. It seemed that the house was whispering with two voices, her own whisper of lies and her husband's cold bass, singing the truth against the backdrop of the spotlights. And in the next room, Aiden was watching fresh takes. On screen, actress Raven pursed her lips and whispered, "I'm just tired, honey." He slowed down the frame and caught the microsecond where the corner of the lips trembles, the moment when a lie enters the blood. He smiled with a thin smile, as if he heard distant applause in the operating room. The operation was going according to plan, the tissue was opened, the vessels were under control. Filming had just begun, and the most precise scene when the heroine lies to her husband was still waiting for the climax. He knew, the more careful the director, the more surgical the cut, and the louder the silence in the patient's heart when the lights on the site go out completely. Moving from the pavilion to the dressing room, Raven removed her wig with the careful efficiency of a surgeon, carefully placing her curls in the net. Under the light of the lamps, her real silver dreadlocks sparkled with phosphorus. In the mirror, she saw Aiden's gaze lingering on the back of his head, as if checking a seam line. Not for the first time, the space between them was cut by a thin, cold stream of interest. "Hard day?" she asked, taking off her lenses. "Scenes of lies always draw a lot of energy," he answered. He had a stack of storyboards in his hands. The fingers remembered them as a pianist remembers the keys. Raven reached for a bottle of water, but the cap slipped off. He caught the bottle and their palms collided. Liquid electricity ran across my skin. She did not withdraw her hand, but looked straight into her eyes, gray-green pupils without a shadow of play. "Do you know that already on the third take we are living without the director's distance?" she said. "You staged the scene as if you were documenting your own pain." "Professional habit," he replied. "Pain is the best teacher of rhythm." She smiled, sincerely, boldly. He suddenly realized that he had never seen this smile on Katie in the last year. Raven's was pure, not covered with barking excuses. On the next filming shift, they were left alone in the bedroom after the crew had gone to test the lighting in the set garden. Raven was still in character, her hair was disheveled, and there was a trace of lipstick on her lips, which the makeup artists had applied but not completely removed. Aiden checked the exposure. It was the angle of the light, as if both were looking for the ideal vector in which the shadow of the past disappears. "You know," Raven said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I don't just read your instructions, I hear them shake. You have seen real betrayal, but instead of burning the house down, you turned it into a stage. It's beautiful and scary." Aiden sat down next to him, a thin layer of sheet between them, and although there were centimeters left before touching, the air thickened. "Scary means alive," he whispered, "but beauty is in truth. Aren't you afraid to play the truth?" "I'm not afraid to look into the eye socket while it's hot," she answered, and her voice contained that directness to which he had long since lost immunity. The pause was chilling. He noticed that her lips were slightly parted from feverish breathing. The lamp hummed like a distant transformer. There was no mycelium of lies, there was no habitual nature of concealment. Only the impulse is clear, sharp. Aiden raised his hand and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. She didn't move. Their line of sight darkened like film in the developer. He leaned down and touched her lips, just a mark, like a director's pencil mark in the margin of a script. She answered with the same determination, as if she had been rehearsing this take for a long time, but had never acted. Kissing her felt neither like the restraint of a marriage nor like the rapacity of past grievances. There was something direct in the kiss, without secret alleys. He felt the scene shift from paper to blood. It was being filmed without a camera. The only material carrier would be memory. Raven stopped moving and placed her hand on his chest. "I don't belong to your past, and I don't want to be part of the revenge," she said quietly. "Tell me that there is something else here besides your script." He sighed. There were no lies left in his pocket. He gave it all on film. He responded with honesty, which he was used to opening only with a scalpel. "For the first time in a long time, I see a person who speaks without curtains. It's a relief." She nodded and, instead of words, kissed his temple. The touch was more intimate than the deepest scenes. He smelled her skin slightly warm, with the metal of dressing room lamps and the peppery freshness of mint lozenges. They returned to filming without advertising the new energy, but the team noticed. The director became softer in his voice, and the actress became more precise in her pauses. The taste of a secret romance did not erode concentration. On the contrary, it made the scenes unsteady and dull, like fresh scars. Raven came to the set earlier to correct the accents in the script. On page 47, she suggested adding a line, "There is more authenticity than blood." Aiden agreed, even if producer Nora grumbled that the ending needed to be kept within the flow. It wasn't just the film that bothered him anymore. He was looking for a new language in which honesty would not fall apart like the stomach of a data array. On rare days without a shift, they met in a coffee shop called Dusk to Dawn. The novice barista didn't know the story and simply noticed that the art drama star girl was sitting opposite the doctor director, swinging her leg to the beat of the old blues. Raven told how in her first year of film school she was offered plastic roles, but she answered, "First I'll cut out the excess skin and then I'll stick a band-aid on." Aiden laughed quietly. Laughter brought the heavy balloon out of my lungs. She was ambitious. She asked about distribution, about international festivals, about the prospects of directing, without lowering her eyes to the table. She said, "Fear only takes away those who lie about themselves." And there was a contrast in this, color less bright. Next to Katie, he always had to guess where sincerity began, where decorativeness began. With Raven, everything was laid out in the palm of your hand, even before the question. After the double lunch shift, they were left alone in the dressing room. Raven still wore neatly lined arrows, although the lines were crumbling as if they were tired. Aiden removed the terry robe of the filming costume from her shoulders, and underneath was a black bodysuit for microphones. "You know the story will come out anyway," she said. "Your wife will understand the sources." "She already sees," he admitted. "But he doesn't want to complete the puzzle. It's scary to discover the center." Raven looked into her eyes. "Doesn't it bother you that we are bare on the bones of her fear?" "I was tormented by lies." He ran his finger over her cheek. "Honesty heals, even if it hurts." She moved her face closer, her breath mingling with the smell of makeup. Hands intertwined without theatrical pause. This time the kiss was different, not a mark, but a decision. Aiden felt a sharp clarity run down his spine. He didn't need to hide this closeness. It was part of the truth, as immovable as gravity. Outside the pavilion window, air conditioners hummed, orange gnat lamps cast false shadows of palm trees on the asphalt. Inside, Aiden took out a notebook and wrote a new scene with an oblique, percussive hand. The heroine takes off her mask, but instead of the expected face, there is clean glass. Raven read the phrase behind his shoulder and nodded. "This is not about her. This is about all of us." "No," he smiled, "about those who have learned to speak out loud." The words opened a minute of silence, and in it, it suddenly became obvious. He had found a new muse, one that does not hide, does not dodge under the corset of silken lies. Under the soft light of the dressing room lamps, the actress and director understood that their romance was breaking the umbilical cord of the previous script. An unexpected reality awaited the producers. Housewife is no longer about the betrayal of one couple, but about how the truth is born in someone else's house and changing voices becomes louder than any lie. Aiden closed his notebook and looked at Raven. In a world where cameras are life, this woman looked at him without a single embellishment. He took her hand and said something that had been on the tip of his tongue for a long time. "Thank you for not lying." She didn't respond with words. She simply squeezed his fingers tighter, and the man's throat was filled with a feeling not of guilt, not of revenge, but of a new, clear flame. For the first time in many months, he was not afraid of the light. Sunday noon. The kitchen smelled of citrus countertop cleaner, but Katie could smell something else in the air, a warm note of excitement. Aiden stood at the bar, holding two black pearlescent envelopes in his hands. On the front side, embossed in silver, Helios Media Private Premiere. "What is this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "An invitation," he replied with a smile that was hard to look away from. "Closed screening of a new drama. Tuesday evening, Vista Theater. A colleague from the clinic gave me 2 tickets and said that the story was powerful and frank." Katie ran her finger over the gloss, feeling a slight chill. "And you want us to go out into the world. Why hide? He was almost joking, but his eyes remained serious. I think we both need a big screen and a glass of champagne. What is the film about? He shrugged as if the question was of minor importance. I'm not completely sure. I only know the name Housewife. They say it's a melodrama, a mixture of art house and thriller. Katie nodded, trying to hear her own feelings. The word cut like a piece of ice, but she forced the corners of her lips to rise. We haven't walked the red carpet for a long time, Doctor. Then it's decided, he said. Tuesday at 7. I reserved a table at Ramey's next to the cinema. She took the envelope, and with it a cold, elusive premonition. But pride is stronger than anxiety. Who knows what the new premiere could mean for her career? Magazines are now buzzing. The pages are looking for fresh faces. Maybe a random photographer will pick up her image, and suddenly everything will work out. Tuesday, 1812. The bedroom was filled with the light of sunset gold. Katie stood in front of the mirror in a scarlet silk mermaid dress. A thin chain with a pearl slid along her collarbones, covering a barely noticeable mark from nervous scratching. Aiden knocked and opened the door. The dark tuxedo fit perfectly. He was holding a pair of gray gloves in his hands. Busy spirit, she said, catching his gaze in the mirror. Okay, not too dramatic. The most beautiful woman of the evening, he replied, rising behind the zipper and carefully pulling up the slider. His touch sent a shiver through her, not warm, but icy, as if the metal had frozen against the skin. You look especially elegant today, she said, turning around. He smiled lightly. Today is a significant evening. Outside the Vista Cinema, the crowd sparkled with camera flashes. The red carpet stretched under an arch of spotlights. On both sides stood reporters in tuxedos and show blog hosts in sequins. Banners with the film's title glowed with fresh paint. Housewife white letters on black, silhouette of a woman in the ring light. Wow, Katie whispered. Private premiere, did you say? Half the city is here. Helios are good at show buzz, Aiden noted. Let's go. They were met along the path by a young assistant with a list. Dr. Reeves, Mrs. Reeves, nice to see. Photo for the press corner? Of course, Aiden answered, offering his elbow to his wife. The flashes lit up like selfie lightning. Katie caught the lenses. Her head was slightly to the side, her smile was even, her shoulders were straightened. The journalist with the screenbeat microphone stepped forward. Tell me, what do you expect from the film? She asked in a businesslike manner. The truth, Aiden answered briefly, but with a slight shadow of a smile. And you, Mrs. Reeves? Katie blinked and composed herself. I love stories where a woman has a complex inner world. I think this is about all of us. What a beautiful pendant, the journalist inserted. He kind of plays a big role in the film. Katie felt a little cold and pressed her fingers to the pearl. I haven't seen the picture, she replied. I'll find out along with everyone else. An assistant led them through a line of cells to a marble staircase. Nora Craze stood at the foot in a champagne pantsuit, greeting the guests. Seeing Aiden, she raised her glass slightly. Doctor, it's a joy to see in red. This is your Catherine, he introduced. My muse and support. Oh, I'm sure you'll like it. The film is brave but honest, Nora said. Emotions beyond the bounds. I hope so, Katie replied, feeling a prick of cold sweat between her shoulder blades. The foyer smelled of expensive perfume, truffle oil popcorn, and the flash of ozone lamps. Aiden led his wife to the champagne table. Are you sure everything is fine? He asked quietly, pouring her a glass. Why not? She brushed back her hair, forcing herself to smile. I think I'm nervous. I don't like surprises. Sometimes surprises reveal beauty, he said. Try to see the whole picture. She took a sip. Bubbles of the ice-cold drink burst on the tongue, mingling with the taste of wariness. The doors of the hall opened. The hostess led them down the aisle, row F, seats 12-13. The screen was covered with a velvet curtain. On the stage, there is a minimalist podium for the welcoming speech. Katie sat down, straightening her dress. The phone vibrated in the bag, another request from a group of fans. They say Muse will appear in the hall. She pressed later and hid the device. Did something happen? Aiden asked. Fans right, she admitted, saying quietly so as not to attract attention. They think that I am somehow connected with this film. He covered her hand with his. Look ahead. Let them talk after watching. The critics were seated in the front rows. Katie recognized one. He wrote a conscientious blog about the dark side of erotic streaming. He glanced into the hall and stopped at her for a moment, as if recognizing her. Her skin broke out in goosebumps. Light music started playing, and the curtains opened. Nora Craze took the stage to applause. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sharing our new stage with us. Her voice crawled across the microphone like elastic silk. The film you will see is a frank story about love, obsession, and the price of fame. It is dedicated to those who dared to show their truth. Katie stretched her spine as if on command. From the phrase, "show your truth," my heart skipped a beat. The picture is fictitious, Nora continued, but everyone will find in it a reflection of their home, their fears. Laughter in the hall. Some of the guests had already heard the marketing slogan. Nora introduced the team. The names sparkled under the spotlight. Director E. Reeves, Scenario Dual Exposure LLC. When medical advisor Dr. Flashed, E. Reeves, several cameras in the room clicked. Katie turned to her husband, her lips parted. You consulted, he confirmed easily. A couple of scenes about medical precision. But you didn't say. I wanted to surprise, he said calmly, and a millimeter of shadow passed across his face. Something thick began to rise inside her, like dark honey. But the applause poured out, and the lights in the hall went out. On the screen, while Katie's head was buzzing, the opening credits flashed. Housewife, a Helios Media original. The music began with a quiet heartbeat. She surrendered herself to the chair, feeling the cold dress stick to her skin. A glass of champagne trembled in the armrest. A drop fell onto the varnished wood. Darling, Aiden whispered, leaning close to his ear, breathe evenly. It's just a movie. The first scene appeared on the screen, the white facade of a house, palm trees, a sunset mover's truck. Katie sank back into the seat, feeling her eyelashes tremble. This is... She began, but her voice was choked. SHH. Look, he said softly, coldly, like a man showing a patient an X-ray before and after. In the darkness of the hall, the dim screens of the critics flashed as they took notes, and Aiden sat motionless, like a surgeon, confident that the operation had already begun and the life support system was working like a clock. Katie looked ahead. Movers were moving a sofa. A neighbor in a baseball cap introduced himself as Troy. The camera panned towards the pool. The sounds were the same, only a little deeper, as if someone had lowered a microphone into her old life and brought it out into the open space of the speakers. He gave her the premiere, but he didn't tell her what the film was about. Now the story released the first drop of poison into the optic nerve vein, and the whole shining hall, full of charm, seemed like a stage set, built only so that her proud dress would turn out to be a target for scattered pieces of the mirror. The screen light flickered white and bloody scarlet in turn, and Katie listened to her own pulse, which seemed to scream louder than all the Dolby Atmos effects. The drama was just beginning, and the audience trembled in anticipation, not knowing how much the fictional story would turn out to be alive. The velvet curtains of the hall had already closed when the inscription flashed on the screen, Chapter 1. Moving the same letters that Katie painted in watercolors on the wedding card. The audience gasped. The audience received not an art house twist, but an almost documentary chronicle. The house is the same down to the brick, the facade, the pool, the same Sunset Movers logo. This is Wilton Crest, whispered a neighboring gallery owner, sitting 2 rows above. I was there. Katie tried to breathe evenly, but every line on the screen sucked the air out. The double actress easily said, "Are you sure we can afford this house?" And the audience laughed, not knowing that this was her phrase spoken in the twilight of a real bedroom. On the stage 017, the ring lamp came to life, and the scarlet corset was tightened on someone else's body. But the audience didn't need a passport. They recognized the gestures, the room, even the comma mole on the shoulder blade. In the front row, a blogger hissed to an assistant. Did the target take real videos and make a feature? This is the shock marketing of the year. Quiet, the critic restrained him. Look, now is the climax. The screen showed a bag of, for a fondant. The whispers in the hall became louder, like a beehive. Katie felt the champagne rise to her throat. My heart was beating so hard that the entire chair seemed to vibrate. On the dinner party stage, the actress uttered the word cruel, and this word echoed in the audience with a slight cry. Someone recognized themselves among the guests. Troy, a neighbor, was sitting at the end of the row, slammed his hand on his knee, and gaped. "Hey, is that me there?" he whispered to his wife. As the film progressed, the whispers turned into rumbles. Someone filmed what was happening on their phone, someone pointed a finger at the screen. They recognized their garden, their car, a piece of fence. The confrontation scene put an end to it. The actor husband said, "The truth has always been yours. I'm just a mirror maker." And suddenly the hall fell silent. He became so silent that you could hear Katie suck in a sharp breath. Her gaze struck Aiden like lightning. He sat calm, his eyes flickering with reflected light. There is a tiny smile on his face, like a doctor's after a successful operation. The curtain fell, the screen went dark. There was first numbness in the hall, then applause, restrained, nervous. Some spectators jumped up and turned around, as if they wanted to make sure that the actresses would not come out of the shadows. "This is true," asked gallery owner Lauren. "Real footage," shouted the bloggers. Katie stood up, but her legs gave way. She held onto the back of the chair as if it were a railing. Voices from left, right, and front merged into one. "Muse, is this about you?" "Hey," called out a Screenbeat critic. "Mrs. Reeves, are you the same artist? Is it true that the film is about you?" Aiden helped her to her feet, but she pulled away. "No comments," she whispered dully, and, holding the hem of her dress, hurried to the exit. The cameras were already waiting outside. The red carpet has turned into a snake path. Photographers rushed towards her, flashes hitting her eyes. "Mrs. Reeves, who is the author of the story?" shouted the TMZ reporter. "Is the film based on your streams?" Someone with a microphone yelled. "Tell me, are you really Scarlet Muse?" Katie covered her face with her hand. My heart was pounding as if it was trying to escape through my throat. She tripped over her heel. Aiden barely caught him, but she threw his hand away. "Don't touch," she whispered, pale as chalk. The circle of journalists closed. Troy tried to clear the way. "Hey, give me space. She's not feeling well." Katie rushed to the taxi. The door slammed, but with a smartphone camera, someone caught her hysterically wide eyes, tears sliding down her bright lipstick. Within an hour, Twitter exploded. #Housewife Israel, #Scarlet Museumast, #SexHousewife. The website Lay in Depth released Annie Lowell's material, family drama in the flesh. The film Housewife is based on real streams. Katie's phone didn't stop ringing. Her mother was crying from Minnesota, asking if it's really you. Friends from art courses wrote, "We are shocked. Tell me, this is a montage." The neighborhood group on Facebook was rushing about. Some demanded to expel the immoral couple. Others wrote, "Let everyone live as they want." The contracts collapsed completely. Studios sent out penalty notices. "You have violated the image exclusivity clause." Paywave's account has frozen remaining funds due to a potential lawsuit. Local television channel TMZ live broadcast footage of Katie running away from the premiere, surrounded by flashbulbs. The presenter grinned. The script turned out to be cooler than reality. But the doctor husband is also in the credits. Intriguing, right? She rushed around the bedroom, knocking bottles of perfume off the nightstand, looking for a charger so she could at least explain to someone that the film was a lie. But in every scene there was her hand, her birthmark, her words. The words that she herself whispered to the lens. By midnight, tired of making excuses with her voice, She threw the phone on the bed and burst into tears when she saw the screen split into a web of cracks almost like her life. The morning brought ringing silence. There was no smell of coffee, the coffee machine was not working, no jazz music. On the kitchen island lay a large brown craft envelope, with house and car keys nearby. Katie stepped barefoot, trembling as if she was walking on ice. The envelope contains the official notice: petition for divorce, Los Angeles District Court. Signature, Aiden Reeves, plaintiff. The keys on the keychain are the same ones she gave him for his 3rd anniversary. Next to it is a stack of photographs, stills from the filming of the film Velvet Kiss. Katie saw her own face in a mask, a flip-flop on her hip, a red stripe, a black studio background. There is a clear date stamp on the back of each photo. Below the photos is a flash drive. The white plastic cover is signed with a marker. Her other life, the end. She pressed her fingers into the body, not daring to turn it on. There was a salty lump in my throat, a mixture of tears and shame. Steps to the door, and she discovered that her husband's wardrobe was empty. Tuxedos, robes, even white workout sneakers had disappeared. There was only one thing left on the hook: a thin brush with dried scarlet paint, a relic of her student days, the one he found on their first date. With a dull thud, my heart fell into my stomach. He was no longer there. The hum of an engine came from the open window. She ran out onto the balcony. Down by the gate stood a dark gray Tesla. Aiden is driving. In the passenger seat is Raven Miller, her hair in dreadlocks in a high bun. The sunbeam fell on their faces. They were talking, laughing about something. "Aiden," she shouted, her voice becoming hoarse. He looked up, and for a moment a shadow of regret flashed in his eyes, or did it seem? He put 2 fingers to his temple, a gesture of farewell. Raven turned, but Katie didn't see her face, only the reflection of her glasses. The wheels slowly began to move, quickly picking up speed along the cleared driveway. The house, the pool, the palm trees, he left it all to her, along with the ruins of his reputation. Katie followed the car to the end of the street. Tears burned my cheeks, not so much bitterness as hot ashes. Life became dust. She fell to her knees, clutching the flash drive to her chest. The glossy facade now seemed like a stage without actors. The silence spread through the rooms like black paint, and the house was filled with the sound of one's own heart, too loud not to deafen. Waiting on the table was the silent final file, her other life, the end. All you have to do is click play to see how a story in which she deceived others ended up deceiving herself. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.